What's up, guys? Welcome back to Libertalia Game Supply. We're going to take a quicker look at this one here just because I'm still in the beginning stages of learning it. This is an Amazoness deck with the support from Darkwing Blast, as long as this one card that is not in Darkwing Blast, as far as I know. But I want to kind of give you an outline of the way I've been playing the deck, how it works. It's an okay deck. It does what it does pretty well, but it doesn't do anything else very well at all. So we'll just say that. It doesn't protect itself super well. It kind of does, but it's just clunky and like it feels outdated, I suppose. So we'll get into it here. We got one Amazoness Queen. It's for the name as well as the effect because you can kind of create locks with other Amazoness monsters. So when this is on the field, other Amazoness monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. There are other monsters in the deck that do the same thing. So if they're both on the field, nothing can be destroyed by battle. Cool, right? So like a soft lock because you can still get wiped by a spell or trap, but yeah, it's cool. Triple Chief, because it is probably the best monster in your main deck. It can special summon itself from the hand. If you control no monsters or only Amazoness monsters, when it summons, it sets a spell or trap, an Amazoness spell or trap, or a polymerization from your deck to the field. So if you set the poly, obviously you can activate it so you can fusion summon from there. That's good. If you set any of the quick play spells, you gotta wait on them because they're set now. And these are really cards you would want to use on your own turn unless you're trying to play some games with like fusion summoning away something that's getting targeted. Really the targets are going to be poly or the two traps that you're going to put in the back row because they do something when you pass turn anyway, where these don't really as much. This kind of does, but yeah. Then we got Triple Princess. Princess is the name replacement for Queen, so you need Queen to make the Empress and then to go up into the Kycerin, so it's a pretty important piece of the deck. This is just a lot better card than Queen is. It can be normal summon without a tribute. Plus on summon it searches an Amazoness spell or trap to your hand. So you're probably going to search either the call, so then you can search material for the fusion summon if you need it or whatever else. Or you're going to search the secret technique because it's your in-archetype polymerization. Then we got Double Shaman. So Shaman can special summon itself from the hand or graveyard by bouncing an Amazoness card from the field to your hand. So it doesn't have to be a monster. It can be any Amazoness card. So usually what I end up doing is I bounce the Pendulums because you can bounce it, get the special summon, then on summon it searches a polymerization, puts it in your hand, and then you just reactivate your Pendulum and you lose nothing by doing that. So it's a nice little interaction. 2 is plenty because we play the Foolish also, which kind of acts as a third one, as well as a second copy of Tiger, because their effects in the graveyard are pretty useful also. Then we got the one Baby Tiger. It's the name replacement for Amazoness Tiger for the pet Liger, which is a pretty decent fusion card if you need it. Really, there's a cool little interaction between these two. If you were to have the Pendulum on board, this in hand and this in graveyard, and nothing else, you bounce the Pendulum to special, search the polymerization, put the Pendulum back on board. Sorry, you would special summon the Baby Tiger out of the graveyard off of the summon of Shaman, then put this back on board, then polymerization up into the Liger. So the Pendulums all boost attack by 100 per level, so you're summoning a 3200 fusion monster off of this. I guess technically one card is 3 cards, but that situation can arise, or it can be like other things, like you have something else in your hand, or like a queen in your hand that you can't summon or something like that. So it's pretty useful. Tiger, like I kind of already said, special summons itself out of the hand or graveyard when you normal or special summon an Amazoness monster. So it's just an extra body on board, and you can do it once a turn. So it can be an extra body every single turn. So it's pretty nice for that. Also, if you happened to normal summon this, so like you did whatever else, you special summon this, then normal summon this, then fusion summon away, it'll summon itself that turn still, and then you can climb up into something else off of that. So good card. This thing's only here as the special summon off of Kycerin, because Kycerin can special summon one when it gets special summoned. During either player's turn, you contribute this card. This turn, face-up Amazoness monsters you currently control cannot be targeted by monster effects and cannot be destroyed by card effects. So you would put the Kycerin on board, which doesn't really protect itself all that well. It's just a big body. And then you would use its effect to special summon this, which would then protect your Kycerin from monster effects at target and any card effects that would destroy. But 1 is plenty. You don't want to see this in your hand at all. This card sucks outside of just that play, unless you happen to Pendulum summon it for some reason. And even then, there's just so many better things you'd rather see. For the Pendulums, I really like these. These are kind of like the heart and soul of the deck. We got triple of the Silver Sword Master and double of the Golden Whip Master. So they do... You're almost never going to summon them unless you have to for some reason. because their pendulum effects are what makes these monsters so big. So when they're in the pendulum zone, like I said, the Amazoness monsters attack go up by 100 per level that they are, so a level 4 goes up by 400. Also, when they're involved in an attack, they both do something different. So this one can grab an Amazoness spell or trap out of your graveyard and put it in your hand, and this one can pop a spell or trap in your opponent's side of the field. So if you have both of them, you're going up by 200 attack points per every level on each monster. Plus, if you attack or get attacked while these are both on board, you get the card out of the graveyard plus the pop on the opponent's side of the field. So super powerful. If you get both of these on board, it just starts making this deck go pretty crazy, because your monsters are all going to be pretty big. So like, even if you just were special summoning this off of its own effect, its attack goes up by 1,000. So you're at a 2,900 beater, plus that search, plus when you attack with it, you get, I guess technically we would call it a search out of your graveyard for this, and a pop. So these things are awesome. You could maybe go down to 1 on this, because that spell and trap removal is a little bit less important, but I like the 2 just because I like to see it. But they can also be searched off of call and whatnot. Triple Ash Blossom is just the best hand trap in the game, so we play 3. You kind of have to if you're going to play any type of road deck, because they usually don't have a ton of in-archetype ways to deal with like really solid decks. We got the 1 field spell. All Amazoness monsters gain 200 attack once per turn. When an Amazoness is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Amazoness from your deck with a level less than or equal to that Amazoness monster in the graveyard. It's okay. The 200 attack boost is somewhat relevant, especially once you start bumping up the attack with the Pendulum monsters. It is pretty good when you have it on field and one of your big fusions gets destroyed, because you have access to your entire deck at that point. You can summon any of the monsters out of your main deck off of the village effect. So it's alright. 1's more than plenty. It's searchable, so it's whatever. It's just not super relevant to like progressing the game state. It's just a little bit of like comeback, because if you get blown out and you have no way to float or come back from that blowout, you just lose, which is most often the case. Triple call. Take an Amazoness card from your deck, except call, add it either to your hand or send it to the graveyard, so it acts as 3 more Foolish Burials for Shaman and Tiger if you need it, or it acts as a Rhoda for everything else. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target an Amazoness monster you control. This turn, that monster can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. Also, other monsters you control cannot attack. I've never used that effect, really. Kycerin has the effect to attack twice anyway, and usually you don't want to limit, unless they have a really big board and you have a really big monster. So like if I had my Kycerin out there with 5,200 attack or whatever, maybe I would use that, because you're going to OTK right there just by blowing through 5 monsters. But usually that's not, if the board is that big and you're playing against it, you're going to have a really hard time making your plays in the first place, so that effect just doesn't come up as often. Secret Technique, that's your in-archetype polymerization. It also has a second effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard once. If you would fusion summon an Amazoness fusion monster this turn, you can also send 1 Amazoness monster from your extra deck to the graveyard as material. That effect is also kind of hard to use, because you would need this in the graveyard, meaning you activated it already, so you fusion summoned already, and then you would need another poly in your hand, because you can't use a second one of these. So it's very specific situation where you need it, or it's like you summoned a fusion monster past turn, it came back to you, your fusion monster was still on board, and you were able to search or draw into this by accident, and then you could use that effect. It's just not super reliable, but if it comes up, it will be good. It's just it doesn't come up as often. Double poly, that's because a lot of stuff in the deck searches it. It is poly, which is what the deck does. It's a fusion deck. Gotta play it. 2 is good. You're not really looking to draw it. You're going to search it off of this or this pretty much all the time. Foolish Burial, I already explained that enough. Rhoda, because it's like call, but it's not call. Harpy's Feather Duster for that back row removal. Kind of the same deal. If you're playing in a format where there's not a lot of back row, I would probably cut one of these and cut this and play maybe a third Imperm and something else. The 1 Call by the Grave, just to try to stop hand traps if we can. This you absolutely need if you get stuck going second. It does not play through board super well, so you need that board breaker card to just shut everything down to get your monsters on board and then try to attack over everything. For the most part, if you have the cards in your hand to build a board and you can shut off all those monster effects, you'll be able to attack over everything because of how quickly the monsters get big. But if you don't have this you're going to get stopped on play number 1 when you try to summon a searcher or whatever, and that's going to be the end of the game. You're going to pass turn, you're going to lose. So gotta have this or something like this. Double Prosperity, you use half your extra deck, so 3 you can't really ever resolve without completely ruining your ability to actually play the deck anymore. So 2 felt fine to me there. 1 Hot Spring, so this is the one that we're not getting yet, I don't think. But this one's pretty cool. So when this card is activated, add 1 Amazoness monster to your hand or place 1 Amazoness Pendulum monster in your Pendulum zone from your deck. When you take battle damage while you control an Amazoness monster, you can gain life points equal to the damage you took. You can only use effective Hot Spring once per turn. So basically, I would special summon this off of its effect, use its effect on summon to put this in the back row. Then when you pass turn, you flip this, and then take one of these 2 and put it in the Pendulum zone, so this goes up to 2400, so it's a pretty big monster at that point. And you are protected from taking damage from one of those. Like, you're going to get attacked or whatever if you take big damage, and then it just puts it all back. So that's not as important. It can come up, can be relevant, but it's more the getting to put the Pendulum on the field. So you can even wait till you get attacked into, flip it, Pendulum monster on field, boost it up a little bit, maybe it gets you over a monster, whatever. 1 Onslaught, once per turn during the battle phase, you can special summon 1 Amazoness from your hand, and if you do, it gains 500 attack until the end of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. After damage calculation, if your Amazoness monster battled an opponent's monster while this card is already face up in your spell and trap zone, you can banish that opponent's monster. If this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 Amazoness monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So it's just a pretty good back row. It does a lot of things. 1 is plenty. You just don't want to be drawing this kind of stuff because it doesn't move your board state better, but it gives you a little something to kind of work through other, what they're giving back to you. And then double Imperm, I could not find a better trap. I wanted something that would be more useful or more impactful, and it just doesn't happen. If you're going first, then playing a different back row card like the Strikes, or I had some different types of Mirror Forces in there, just aren't good. Or if you're going second, rather, it's just not good, because if you draw them, you're so screwed, because you need the other cards. So at least with the Imperm, if it's in your hand and you're going second, you can still use it. I don't know, man. If you got a better idea, I'd love to hear it down below. Then for the extra deck, I'll run through these that I don't summon. Access Code, Appaloosa, Unicorn, Phoenix, Cerberus, Ausa, Adrius, Machumek. Don't summon any of them. I put these 5s in here just because I didn't feel like playing something else, I guess. You could play more copies of these things, but it really doesn't come up as far as I know. Maybe you would play a second one of these if you really felt like it, but haven't needed them at all. The rest of this is just here because it's here. It probably usually will end up being fodder for your despair or your prosperity anyway. And then for your Amazonish fusion, so you got your pet Liger. Once per battle, if this card attacks during damage calculation, you can make this card gain 500 attack during that damage calculation only. If your Amazoness monster attacked an opponent's monster after damage calculation, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. It loses 800 attack. Monsters your opponent controls cannot attack Amazoness monsters you control except this one. So it does a lot to get pretty big pretty fast, especially if you have your Pendulums on board or even 1 Pendulum on board, plus its own 500 bump, plus dropping something by 800 while you have the Pendulum bumps on another monster on the field. Usually can help you go a long way in getting through a couple monsters on field. This is by far not my first choice, but it's a nice option if it comes up. Double Empress, so it's 1 Queen and 1 Amazoness monster, so obviously you have the Queen and the 3 Princess. Other Amazoness cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. If your Amazoness monster attacks a defense position monster, inflicts piercing damage. If this face-up fusion summoned card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while its owner controls it, you can special summon an Amazoness Queen from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So it can float into a Queen, which is good to be able to make a new one because you need this in order to make the Kycerin. Can't be destroyed by battle or other card effects, so technically if you had a way to get this and this on board, they lock your opponent out from being able to destroy either of them by card effects, and it floats a little bit, so it's a pretty decent card. This is the older fusion. These next ones are the new ones. They're better. So we've got Amazoness King Liger, 1 level 5 or higher Amazoness monster plus 1 Amazoness monster. Monsters your opponent controls cannot attack monsters except this one. You can target 1 Amazoness card you control and 1 Warrior Amazoness monster in your graveyard, destroy that card on the field, and if you do, special summon that other monster from the graveyard. This card cannot attack the turn you activate this effect, only once per turn. So it does the same sort of thing with the lockout with this and this or this and that or whatever. Also, it can like help board fix a little bit out of the graveyard, like if you want your one Amazoness Queen out of the graveyard, or there you go, if your Amazoness Queen is in the graveyard and you had a baby tiger summon itself off of this thing being summoned, you can pop the tiger to special summon that back, and then you've set up that little lock right there, so it interacts pretty well. It's also pretty big, so 2900 attack at a level 9, meaning with one Pendulum monster on board it becomes a 38, with 2 it becomes a 47. So just a big boy. And then the big boss, Amazoness Kycerin, one Amazoness fusion monster plus one Amazoness monster. So usually it's going to be the Empress up into this. If this card is fusion summoned, you can special summon one Amazoness monster from your deck. You can only use this effect of Kycerin once per turn. Your opponent cannot target other Amazoness cards you control with card effects. Also, it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. This card that was fusion summoned using Empress and or Queen as material can make a second attack during each battle phase. So that's why the Empress ends up being the material, is because that's how you get the double attack. This thing's a level 10, so with 2 Pendulums on board, it becomes 5200 attack. It can attack twice. With Call, it can attack, I guess, at the most 6 times, which pretty much just wins you games. It's got onboard protection for all your other stuff, and it gets to special summon a monster from the deck, usually going to be Scouts, because that's the protection for it. So it'll protect your board, Scouts will protect it, and it's just a big beater. So this is the end goal every single time. You want Kycerin as quickly as you can, and then you want to protect it, because usually if you can keep it on board for 1 or 2 turns, you're going to be able to win, because it just attacks over everything. But that pretty much wraps it up. That's the whole deck there. It's just a battle-focused deck, which kind of makes sense considering they're Amazoness warrior women. So that's the flavor I suppose they were going for. It's alright, I like it a little bit. I probably won't be picking it up in person. It's fun to play around with online. I'll probably come back to it here and there just to see what kind of other stuff I can think of. I found that I would play for a little while, go do other stuff, come back maybe the next day or whatever and play again, and it's like new interactions just started clicking in my head and like, oh man, it's so much better when you know that you can do this or that or whatever. So I think that's true for all decks, but especially for decks that just aren't apparently very good from surface level. So I would recommend you at least try to play around with the new support if you had any interest in building the deck at all. If you have the old core even, I think all the new stuff in the new set, Darkwing Blast, is all common, so it's all going to be pretty cheap in the first place there. So might as well, right? It'll cost you like $1 to get play sets of everything at that point, you know. So I want to thank you guys for checking this one out with me here today. I'll have another one up next week, which is release week for Darkwing Blast, so it'll probably be something else out of there, just so that it's relevant. You know, we got to play the algorithm. But thanks for hanging out with me here at Libertalia Game Supply on another beautiful Friday. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you next time.